Kathy, not on mute, but on the phone.
You guys may want to mute her just in case, whoever is the host. So we don't hear our personal conversation.
Yeah.
Sutton, y'all want to wait another minute and then go, or what?
I think we can go ahead and go.
Okay. Well, welcome everyone. I want to call this meeting to order. I want to introduce myself. I'm Chris Kelly, the new chairman of the board. I want to give you all a couple minutes of my background, just because many of you may not know me. And since I'm going to be leading this, well, we'll see after the meeting if I'm still leading this this group, but at least for the next couple of years, I'll be leading this group. And I know many of you, I have followed your leadership within our community for many, many years, but want to give you a little bit of my background before we get started. I am originally from LA, but again, as you can tell by the accent, not Los Angeles, but Lower Alabama. So please don't hold that against me. It's also called the Redneck Riviera. For those of y'all that have kind of been through South Alabama, maybe on your way to the Gulf of Mexico. My wife and I have been in Memphis since 1995, so we traveled here following her career. She was a reporter at Channel 3 early on in our stay here, and I went to work for National Bank of Commerce, worked there for about 9 years, and then the last 17, I have been the executive director of the Barrett School of Banking, the Paul W. Barrett Jr. School of Banking that's housed on campus at Christian Brothers University. And what I do is work with community banks around the country. I know Archie's been on the board at Tri-State, so a community bank that maybe has a few branches, whether it's in a metro market or rural America, and helping them put together training programs that will help lead their next generation of bankers and making sure that they can kind of take care of their communities. So that's what I do professionally. As it goes for a family, I've got a 10th grader at East High School right now. I am missing his regional championship for soccer right now, so I'm bummed a little bit about that. I have a daughter who's in 5th grade at Peabody Elementary. She is at the fair that's next to the Liberty Bowl. I am not bummed about missing that. So the happy medium is getting to spend the next hour and a half or so with you all. Having my kids in public schools, I'm a huge supporter of our public schools. And I will say, especially since 2008 or so, being involved in Leadership Memphis and getting to know some of the people that we have on this call, Kathy Moore-Cowan, especially, and Archie Willis and some others who I consider friends and mentors. I really had an epiphany of how I can get involved and help this community. And so serving on the board at Leadership Memphis for a number of years, being a facilitator there, that's how I met Sutton in 2008. And for whatever reason, she still recommended to Bob that I join the board. Not sure why, but happy about that. But I'm thrilled to be involved in this organization, and couldn't be more excited to work with all of you, because like I said, knowing what all you have done in your careers and philanthropically giving back to our city, it's an honor for me to be here and serving with you all. So that's a little about me. What I'd like to do now is just quickly go through our chairman's report. And that chairman's report, one, the CEO evaluation. In the coming weeks, you should get a email from Marty Regan in his office, and it'll be a Survey Monkey that will ask a number of questions to evaluate Bob Faulkner, our CEO. So please, when that does come, get that turned around as quickly as possible. What I'd like to do next is on page 2 in our report, you will see our 5-star recruiting class that we have coming in to our board. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that, but Kanji Anthony, Erica Stiff Coopwood, and Dorcas Young Griffin, 3 new members of our board. These 3 new members, being 5-star recruits, move us up to the #1 recruiting class of all community foundations in the United States. So I want to applaud Bob and Sutton for their recruiting prowess. But if you look at those, and most of y'all know these 3 individuals because of so many things they've done in our community. So it's exciting to have those 3 folks join our board. What I would like to do now, and what we need is as an action item, is to, if I'm correct, Bob and Sutton, we need to approve those. So what I'd like is a motion to approve these 3 new members.
So moved.
Second, Kathy.
Okay. We have a first and a second. Is there any comments? Hearing none, I'd like to get all those in favor, please speak up.
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Great. So we've got 3 new wonderful additions to our board. And the final thing on my chairman's report, and expect an email from Sutton maybe tomorrow or early next week. And it's a confidentiality or conflict of interest agreement that each of us need to sign each year. And so it will be sent electronically. And so there's a copy of it that's on page 3 and 4. And so that's what it's going to look like, but it will come electronically. So when it comes, please do send that so we don't have to stick Sutton on you and chase you down to get it signed. So if you can take care of that, that would be great. And so that's all I have for my chairman's report. So Bob, you're up next.
Thanks, Chris. Quick comment on the 3 new board members, by the way. It's pretty unusual that all 3 new board members are either already sitting on a committee, or in the case of Erica Stiff-Coopwood, had actually run a significant campaign for us. So all 3 of these folks are already very well involved, which is great. Couple things. Susan Cooley, wave your hand. Susan Cooley will be retiring next week. So Susan has been with us for right at 15 years, right, Susan? Yep. Manages all of the donor grant work, which is, well, I'll talk about this in a second, how many transactions she handles a year. But she'll be stepping aside, and we will all miss her quite a lot. Speaking of all-stars, Kristen Ball, wave your hand. Kristen joined us about 6 weeks ago and has been working with Susan on grants, and will be stepping into to Susan's role as she steps away. They've already worked together on a couple grant rounds, so Kristen is pretty well assimilated to the work. So Susan, we will absolutely miss you, and we'll have a better opportunity to talk more about that later. But Kristen, we're certainly glad to have you. I touched briefly on the annual meeting. The annual meeting was last week, and for those of you that watched it, we did have some minor technical issues related to bandwidth in the building, which apparently AT&T is trying to take back from us. But you know, it was very heavily produced. I'm going to show you a little bit of it in a second. But the attendance wasn't as great as I would have liked. We had a couple fewer than 100 people. I think that just shows that people are just getting really tired of Zooming. So yeah, it ended up being about 40 or 45 minutes. So it ended up being half the time that was supposed to be. But you know, I think it's hard to talk people into an hour and a half Zoom these days. But we've got a lot of the information that's out there nonetheless. Actually, I think I'm going to go ahead and run this real quick. So just to give you a little bit of a flavor of what we did. Again, we did much higher quality graphics than we've had in the past, but I'm going to run, we produced 5 or 6 videos, 6 or 7 videos, and I'm going to show you 2 of them. They're both very, very, very short.
History. Lemoyne-Owen College is the beneficiary of a $40 million endowment
at the Community Foundation of Greater Memphis.
Kenzie Scott, ex-wife of Amazon founder, is pledging $4 billion to 384 charities. We've confirmed that $8 million of that money will be going to the Community Foundation of Greater Memphis, the only Memphis-based charity on Scott's list.
And a lot of people have been struggling during this pandemic, most notably hospitality workers. Relief is coming, though.
And donations are still needed. The Community Foundation of Greater Memphis's COVID-19 Regional Response Fund raised about $4 million in 12 weeks. 60% was used for immediate relief.
So that was just to give you a flavor for, basically all the headlines. We actually had garnered quite a lot of headlines over the past year to do with COVID and the Lemoyne endowment and just a lot of things going on. So I'm just going to show you a couple of other slides that have some of the numbers where we ended up with the year. So start with, whoops, don't want to do that again. So our grants for the year were 158,800,000, and significantly, that is the 7th straight year where we've had grant making over $100 million, and obviously well above where it was, before in the period before that. And what I wanted to say was, there are not a lot of community foundations in the country that can say that they exceeded $100 million in grant making for the last 7 years. So that it puts us in pretty rarefied air. We like to share with our donors and our nonprofit partners some of the numbers behind those numbers. So we wrote 7,057 grants last year to 2,012 different agencies. 724 of our funds made grants. All 3 of those numbers are records. So it's pretty incredible. This is also pretty incredible too. We've usually had 75% or more of our grants stay in the Memphis area. This year, 84% of the grants stayed in the Memphis area. And I think that's just a function of kind of what was going on around here, that people were stepping up and helping their neighbors, even more so than usual. And that's also shown in this last chart in terms of where the grants went. For the last probably 10 years, the largest sector receiving grants from our funds has been education. In recent years, education has been as much as 50% of our grant making. The education piece was right at 25%, but human services garnered 34% of our grant making this past year. And again, that's things like, the food bank and MIFA, basically safety net agencies, with basically our donors responding to the COVID pandemic. So just pretty interesting stuff to see. And just so you know, I think we were sort of teasing this at the March board meeting, partly because we've had a lot of gifts in, but also partly because we had a very, very strong stock market. We finished the fiscal year at over $1 billion in assets. So that also makes us one of the largest community foundations in the country. There are not a whole lot of us that have assets in excess of $1 billion. So those are the numbers that I like to share. I want you to be aware of them, and they'll be available elsewhere. But beyond that, I wanted to go right into launching the Forever Fund, and this is the video we used to do that.
This is our Mid-South, a diverse community with invaluable human and natural resources, but also social and economic challenges that became even more pronounced in the past year. It was a year of what ifs. What if our community is forced to face another unprecedented crisis? What if we could plan for the next opportunity? What if we could build for the next 50 years and beyond? Now more than ever, we know we must be prepared to support our neighbors in need. And looking ahead to better times, we must have the resources to invest to make our community even better. Today, tomorrow, forever. That's why the Community Foundation of Greater Memphis has launched the Forever Funds, a way we can help create solutions that equitably address our community's unique and diverse needs. How? Through grant making that values impact, accountability, inclusion, and partnership and collaboration. and by the launch of a community endowment that will serve as a permanent source of funds, generating grant dollars every year to support Memphis and the Mid-South. Building the region that we want will take all of us. We are committed to listening to the whole community and making investments driven by diverse voices. We decide together, which is how we know we'll be successful for a lifetime and beyond. With your support, Forever starts today.
Let's just give you a little flavor for what we did last week. And I wanted to show that to get you thinking, because at the end of the meeting today, we want to sort of pick up on some of the themes, basically having finished the year with these kinds of numbers, but also having launched the Forever Funds, which is going to have a lot to do with our future. We sort of want to pick your brain at the end about kind of your view of the strategic direction, but also specifically some thoughts that you might have on the Forever Funds. So let me move on. Let me quit sharing, and I'll go ahead and talk about a couple of the other things that I wanted to touch on. Besides the annual meeting, I wanted to touch on an update on our office operations. We have been preparing for this past Monday for a couple of weeks. This past Monday, we fully opened our office. We have everybody back as of last Monday. We've got a very fortunate office arrangement. Everybody has their own office, so we're social distancing is not an issue. We are requiring masks in the building in public spaces, but that's so far it's gone very, very well. We had gone the 2 weeks prior to this with half the staff in it at a time. And that went very, very smoothly as well. So for the foreseeable future, that's where we will be operating, with basically everyone in with masks. We are still not offering our public spaces for outside groups to come in for a bunch of reasons. Among other things, we don't have the ability to turn and clean those rooms to let multiple people use them. And plus, we can't control, who would be coming in. So we're saying that at least for the rest of the calendar year, our public spaces, our meeting rooms will not be available except for our use. We are using them a little bit, but not a whole lot. Then I think I want to throw this to Sutton. Sutton's going to update us on a couple things, both the COVID Regional Response Fund, where that's headed, and also the donor perception report.
Sure. So the Mid-South COVID-19 Regional Response Fund is still rolling on. Dorcas, our new board member, if you don't know, is the county representative. So she's been working with us on that. We finished the operating grant round, the first operating grant round of this year, right before the March board meeting. We are planning a second one of those that'll happen later this fall. We had already distributed fund to River City Capital to do recovery loans for small businesses. They were able to leverage the $750,000 that we gave them with another $1 million from Cummins, and they have already distributed all of that money. They got that money in early February. It's all been distributed, and they have helped about 75 businesses in that time. We have also distributed the money for the housing, for the supportive housing and for homeowners, supporting work for homeowners with United Housing, and that continues on. The big piece that's kind of sitting out there is, we have talked about with you guys, is doing something as it relates to mental health and kind of the community-wide response to trauma. And we have started those conversations with a couple of different folks across the community. The Grants and Initiatives Committee has met with some folks from UT Health Science Center to talk about an approach that we may take to that work. We're still getting some other community members involved. I've met with some yesterday, meeting with some more tomorrow. So, excuse me, I think you'll hear more about that moving forward. But right now we're kind of in a little bit of a lull before we go into doing some more fundraising learning cohorts and the operating grant, and kind of figuring out the structure of this mental health piece. Besides that, if you are a donor, you should have received an email that's inviting you to participate in the donor perception report. Donors are able to respond to that for most of May. If you have been on the board for 4 years or longer, you know that the Center for Effective Philanthropy will be doing aggregating that information and doing a presentation for you all in the fall. So if you're a donor and you haven't responded, please do. If you're a donor who knows other donors, please ask them to respond, because that work has really was really important to kind of creating the baseline for the last strategic plan that we did. And we use it internally with the staff a lot to make decisions and things that we're doing. So
Hey,
those are my 2 things.
Sutton, who's that email supposed to be coming from? Because I don't think I've seen it. I'm worried that it may be in my spam.
It is coming from the Center for Effective Philanthropy, and the woman's name is Carly Marchioni. So it doesn't come from us.
Yeah, I haven't received it either, Sutton. I was just checking through my emails.
We will get with Center for Effective Philanthropy, and I know that they actually sent out something, I think, this morning. So we'll make sure that we reach out again.
If you have donor emails, it might be a good idea to send something from you guys alerting donors that it's coming and who it's coming from.
We have done that twice.
Okay.
Yep.
And for the record, Sutton, I did receive the survey invitation and the tickler telling me to get to it. So one donor it's getting through my spam filters.
Did you say it did come to your spam folder?
No, I'm saying it's coming through fine.
Oh, okay, great.
Okay, any other comments? I'm gonna throw it to Alex to go over the financials.
All right, how's everyone doing? So I'm sure everyone's aware, but we ended April 30th, which is our fiscal year. We don't have the books closed yet, so I do want to just caveat everything as I jump into this, that any grant or gift numbers are locked in, but performance is only posted through March. We haven't posted April yet, and we'll have audit adjustments that come through as we get through that process. So some of these numbers will change. I'll kind of call those out as we go through this. And Bob hit on a lot of this, so I'll kind of gloss through some of these numbers. But we ended the year with total assets we know of at least 1.05 billion. We're hoping that once we post April performance, that's a little higher than that. And as of the end of March, roughly 56% of the $316 million increase compared to last year, 56% of that roughly is from market performance, with 44% from new gifts. And total gifts for the year were 209 million. As we go through some of these numbers, this graph here on the left is not right. I just caught that, so don't pay any attention to that one. I didn't update it from last quarter. But Bob highlighted the grants paid in just over 159 million, which is higher than last year. And this piece he highlighted too of the grants that were just taking everything. Something that's interesting is we have a new kind of acronym, B for billion, which isn't new, but new for the statements. Into the operating budget, again, this is kind of estimated and preliminary. These numbers should be fairly accurate here, though. Management fees were, north of where we estimated. That's just really purely due to market performance and our net asset base being higher than we anticipated, which is a good thing. We had the PPP transfer in, that's been fully forgiven. Then ultimately here, net operating surplus is just under 1.2 million with an M, just under 1.2 million. So it's a pretty good place to be. I can kind of briefly run through some of these. Personnel expense is higher. Is $186,000 saving compared to budget, primarily due to COVID-related benefit increases that didn't happen that we anticipated. delayed premium increases, couple positions where people are out or retired. We have a budgeted position that was unfilled due to COVID. Staff development, travel, meetings, this is due to COVID, $96,000 surplus to budget. So really the marketing, communications, philanthropic services, and staff development, travel, those are all COVID related. We just haven't been able to meet in person. We've kind of shifted some things to digital. The building and office operations surplus of $53,000 is primarily due to one of the HVAC items we moved to capital. We have that capital reserve fund that replenishes this. A reimbursement variance of $12,000 is actually more expensive than what we anticipated. It's just an IRS payment that was made between 2014 and 17 that is no longer collectible. So we've written that off. And professional services of $71,000 being over budget is just due to increase of credit card fees, which is actually a good thing. So, we pay a processing fee as a percentage of the dollars that come in. So with the community partnerships that we've had, more activity coming in from the community just means higher fees. A lot of times we'll charge those back to the fund, but when they're kind of community grant making things like COVID and different things, we've kind of taken a large portion of that fee just as a community service. And then we did switch our audit firm, and we've kind of accelerated some of that billing just because we've changed the timeline and tried to get people in to kind of the reports out faster. Any questions about the operating budget? Okay.
Hey, Alex. Alex, this is Marshall Clark. I was just, you said that the PPP loan was forgiven. Any conversations there about just returning those funds? Because obviously we ended with a very healthy revenue over expenses. So it looks like we didn't need those funds.
Yeah, when we applied for the payroll protection program loan, it was a very uncertain time. The market had taken a tremendous nosedive, if that's okay to say. And talking with other foundations and just organizations, nobody knew what was going to happen. And so we did apply for the loan when things were very uncertain. And we did go ahead and apply for the forgiveness, just being part of that process. That's an option that I guess the committee could make. Is my understanding is that, that we do have that option to pay it back. We also have the option to, theoretically apply that to grant making, which I think Sen and Bob may talk about that more later. Is it better to send it back to the government, or should we, deploy the dollars into the community? I don't know that that's necessarily my decision, but I guess that's the decision I would kind of, the question I would ask.
Strictly speaking, those dollars were spent in April, May, and June last year. We because of growth in our assets since then, and because of savings in our expense budget since then, that's where the excess has really been generated. So it is up to the board.
I'll chime in on that, Bob, because I've assisted a multitude of nonprofits, and I do know that there was an issue with entities like Harvard and Stanford and Notre Dame that had multi-billion-dollar endowments. But when the program came out, it was not a needs-based, it was an incentive to not lay off employees. And the real key was, did you keep your employees fully employed and pay them the normal payroll to keep them off unemployment and to keep them occupied and to keep the economy going? And I think Community Foundation and the administration fulfilled all of those items. It was only later that there were different questions through SBA whether you really needed those dollars and should surrender them or not. But I think Our intent was to keep everybody fully employed through that opportunity at PPP, as opposed to reducing the workforce or putting people part-time during it.
And for context, if it's helpful, we, of every community foundation that's been willing to share what they received for the PPP, we are by far the lowest. The next lowest I even heard of was about 475,000.
Yeah, I think we did the right thing, and as you mentioned, the uncertainty alone was reason enough to apply for it. It seemed, I guess, one last question on my part, and that is, it's kind of couched in the fact that it seems like the spirit of the program was to get those monies out there and make sure that we kept people employed. But it also seems like the spirit is, once you keep your payroll together and have some vision going forward, if you didn't need it, then returning it seems like it's in the spirit of it. The question I have is, the next time there is some sort of situation and the government does something similar, would we be in better standing by having returned those funds from this go round? But I fully appreciate all of the considerations that y'all have gone through to make the decisions that you have.
I mean, I don't think that finding later dollars to repay the loan would put us in any better standing in the future. I will say that those evaluations are exactly why we did not apply for the second round of PPP, obviously.
And Marty's given us his opinion as part of, I guess, responsibilities as council, that we've met the requirements and it's appropriate, right?
Correct. Not only that, but the other side of it is, part of it was to keep the economy going. And what Community Foundation has done is receive dollars from a variety of sources to support segments of our community that were hit extremely hard by the pandemic. And so I would say it's been a very good steward in receiving what we would hope would be our fair share for the South and for Tennessee and for Memphis, in being able to repurpose those dollars to help the multitude of organizations that Community Foundation has funded because of and during the pandemic.
Well, and I know the dollars are fungible, but I want to be very, very careful to make clear that we spent the PPP dollars last year. So we're not repurposing them to community investment. We have produced surpluses since then that we're investing in the community, but the PPP dollars were spent. Any other thoughts or questions? Go ahead, Alex.
Yep. So total assets. So this is as of March 31st also. I mentioned that we don't have April performance posted yet. So this really hasn't changed. I don't know if everybody's seen this though, but total assets of the 1 billion, 50 million, really 51 million, include 78 million of agency funds. So people are aware of that. This miscellaneous number, this grows throughout the year, but these are just the kind of fund specific payments that we make, like charitable remainder trusts of different kinds and lead trust payments, life insurance. On the balance sheet here, this is also as of March 31st, but we have investments of 942 million as of March 31st, which are 340 million higher than last year. Again, performance and obviously and investments and new funds. Everything else here is really pretty much in line with everything. The agency fund growth, I think we did have maybe a little addition, meaning contribution to that, but again, that's primarily performance based. They're primarily in the balance active pool. Our statement of activities, this is a statement list all the activities of the organization. This kind of balances out to other statements on here, but just calling out any huge variances here, contributions, that's kind of self-explanatory, but we had a large contribution last year, last fiscal year. Investments definitely took a turn. This is comparing to March of last year. That's, about the time we were looking at PPP and different things, and the market was in a much different place. Any questions on any of these statements so far?
Just a quick question. The agency funds are basically monies that we manage on behalf of other nonprofits, right?
Yeah.
Are we making similar fee revenue on those funds as compared to the normal donor advised fund business, or 'cause it's a fairly small number now relative to the overall balance sheet?
Yeah, no, we are, when Gid Smith, my predecessor, threw the doors open for that, he offered what he called a brother-in-law fee for nonprofits to bring their funds to us. We charge them a flat 0.5%. I will say that one of the things about those things is, and there are some exceptions, but generally speaking, those are very low transactional funds. So they're very, very little gift and grant activity in those funds. So they're a lot less expensive for us to operate as well.
Okay, that's really what I was getting at. Thanks.
Moving on to key fund balances. These are as of April, but it only reflects March performance. Our reserve funds here are a pretty good place. I think we've talked about this before with the full board. Operating reserve, we just try to fund that to about a third of our operating budget for the year. And capital reserve fund, we pay capital items out of the capital reserve fund throughout the year, and then the kind of allocation for depreciation gets transferred from the operating reserve to the capital reserve at the end of the year to replenish that going forward. And our operating fund is in a pretty good place right now. This is pretty close to our net operating surplus, so that's the difference there. Any questions about any of those items? There's metrics here as of April 31st. Bob kind of touched on a lot of these throughout the kind of the annual report conversation. So I'm happy to highlight anything here, but it may be a little redundant. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them. If not, I will pass it over. Okay. Bob?
Yep, thanks. And then just last thing, we're going to go straight into the consent agenda. And there are, in addition to the minutes from the last meeting and the approval of donor advised fund grants, which we always have in the consent agenda, there's 3 non-controversial but unusual things. I just wanted to run through the 3 things that are in the consent agenda real quick. First of all, on page 20 is a resolution authorizing us to pursue national standards for community foundations. That's basically our national accreditation body. We do that every 2 to 5 years, depending on, they keep moving the bar on when we have to re-up on that. But we have to re-up for national standards right now, and they ask for a formal resolution from the board authorizing us to move forward with the national standards accreditation process. On page 23 is kind of an interesting situation. The Covington Fund, it is basically money that was given to us in a bequest that we had not been aware of previously. So it's from Robert C. and Dorothy F. Covington Trust. And there was a family involved. Their family was involved in the benefits of the trust, but at a certain given time, which was triggered last December, the remainder of the trust was to be dissolved, liquidated, and then half of it goes to us and half of it goes to the last remaining family member. So it looks like we are going to receive a little bit over $500,000 with no strings attached. What we've been doing in the past is creating a separate fund in the names of the people that created the funds sent the funds to us. And that fund will be a permanent named component fund of the Forever Fund. So it'll be part of the Forever Fund's endowment. So as we are launching the Forever Funds, we basically got a contribution of $500,000 that we didn't know about before. So it's a great thing to know about. So the resolution actually authorizes, is the board authorizing the creation of the fund.
I just want to point out, we talked about this in the executive committee, that the trustee of the estate and the family understands that this is what we are using it for, even though we were not left any instructions. We have told them this is what we're using it for. So it's not just being done in a vacuum.
And then very clear. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. You're going to continue presenting. Okay. I thought you were ready for a motion.
And I had just one more thing. The Claude P. Thompson Scholarship Fund. That is a scholarship fund that's been around for a while. It is for families, single families, single parent families. It was offered for both high school students that were coming out of single parent households, but there's also there was also a component to it that was available for single parents that were pursuing their education. The problem was that the timing of those two pieces for high school seniors and for single parent adults, the timing was staggered. So basically all of the scholarship funds were going to high school students, and none of it was going to adult single parents. So in meeting with the donor, we're actually just cutting it in half, and half of it will be solely for high school students and half of it will be solely for single parents. So what this document is, it shows the exact same criteria that we've been using all along. It's just there's a in the law that requires the board to formally approve every scholarship criteria that we have. So what you have is basically we're creating two scholarship funds out of one scholarship fund, and those are the criteria. So Monica, now we can, that's all I have to say. So now we can move forward with the consent agenda.
Yes, so we do need a motion. So I'm assuming, Monica, yours is still on the table?
It's there.
Okay, so do we have a second? Okay.
Second.
Any additional questions or comments? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, consent agenda has passed. And so now actions and updates, elevating our community. Bob Quinn.
I think the primary item we want to talk about, Sutton, is the approval of the budget for giving. Is that correct? I'm going to turn this over. There's a fair amount of puts and takes, but before Sutton walks us through that, I just wanted to reiterate something that was kind of mentioned earlier. We are very lucky that we had great earnings in the funds that we manage for our fund holders this year. And we also were, I think the staff did a great job of managing expenses through the year. We have a significant surplus, and I think we're really lucky that we haven't a team that is designated to take that surplus and turn it back into our grant making. So with that, Sutton, maybe you could walk through the puts and takes so everyone understands what the Grants Initiative Committee oversees this. We have one more duty than the other gift giving committee. We get to approve the budget. So we did approve this. What you're looking at was approved by our GI committee earlier this week. So Sutton, why don't you go ahead and walk through that?
Okay, and this is in your book on page 32, so hopefully you have seen it. It's not overly complicated, broken down into the monies that come into the Forever Funds and then the committees that spend those monies. On the far left, or the second to the left column, is the fiscal year 2021 budget, which is the year that we just ended. And you can see in the middle column there, the actuals that were spent. If you're looking at the source of funds, we raised slightly fewer dollars in unrestricted new gifts to the Forever Funds. That's not terribly shocking because a lot of money was redirected to the COVID fund and other places from our donors. I am anticipating that will be an anomaly, but the other funds that came in, we received as we thought. Looking again at the fiscal year 2021 actual, if you look at the Grants and Initiatives Committee, we budgeted $200,000 for them to continue their Beyond the Classroom work. Not surprisingly, the Beyond the Classroom work continued with Seeding Success this year, but was also in flux because it's pretty hard to work with agencies that are working with kids during their out of school time when both the kids are not in schools and the agencies aren't open. So the committee elected to spend their $200,000 that they had in fiscal year 2021 on the Mid-South COVID-19 Regional Response Fund. We appreciated. Dropping down to that second gray bar, the Strengthening Nonprofits Committee, we did fund the intermediary grants that we had allocated. That was the third year of a 3-year commitment to those 5 organizations. So that was funded as we thought it would be. We did not do capacity building with Strengthening Nonprofits this year and instead diverted that funding also to the Mid-South COVID-19 Regional Response Fund. So they spent the money that they were allocated just in slightly different ways. So that brings us to this year's budget. We are about $7,000 less than we thought we would be, as I said, but I think we'll make that up. We are assuming we will raise about $100,000, if not more, in new gifts. Hopefully, the more we talk about the Forever Funds, the more new gifts we will get. We have talked for the last several years about the transfer from the unrestricted endowment, which can be used for anything. It is unrestricted. It has traditionally been used unless there's been some sort of crisis or other situation for our grant making. The goal is to eventually build up the Forever Funds and wean our grant making off the unrestricted endowment, so those dollars can be put into operating. This year we are recommending the full transfer of the unrestricted endowment, but I think you will see that go down over the next couple of years. Also, as we've talked about in depth, we have a pretty significant budget surplus, and we are recommending that about $750,000 of that go into this year's grant making budget. So if you drop down to grants and initiatives, we have budgeted $300,000, which is about what the Grants and Initiatives Committee has spent the last 4 or 5 years on Beyond the Classroom we just labeled it special projects. We have not finished the Beyond the Classroom work or decided if we finished that Beyond the Classroom work. So we wanted those dollars to be there in the context of Beyond the Classroom, in the context of this mental health conversation that we're having, for that committee to be able to commit some funds. We are recommending also that $500,000 be transferred to the Forever Fund endowment, as we are asking the community to commit to that endowment. We think it's important that we also show a commitment to that endowment. And the last thing under grants and initiatives is $27,000 and change, just unallocated. In the past, staff has been able to make some small grants with those dollars. If there's another grant somewhere here or there that needs a little bit more money, there's just a little bit of cushion. And then quickly dropping down to the bottom to Strengthening Nonprofits, we are recommending adding $100,000 to the intermediary grant process. We are going to step back and kind of review that this year and look beyond the 5 that you see there and think about other organizations that we might want to fund and have an invitational program around those intermediary grants. Ariel is putting work into that now. We are going to skip capacity building grants again this year. One reason is we are continuing the COVID fund through the end of the year with all of the operating dollars and all of that fundraising. That Strengthening Nonprofits Committee is really focused on that. Secondly, honestly, as these organizations are trying to find their footing again, they may not even know what they need to build capacity right now. So we are going to bring that back in 2022, calendar year 2022, fiscal year 23. But we are recommending, based on a lot of what we have heard in the last year, allocating $100,000 for organizations to pay for diversity, equity, and inclusion training for their boards and staff. We haven't quite figured out what that will look like yet either. Ariel's doing a lot of research into that as well. but we know that a lot of funders and a lot of donors are asking organizations to have that kind of training, and there's not anywhere locally where you can like go and get money to help support that work. So based on our community investment principles and just a lot of things that have happened in the last 14 months, we thought that that would be a good use of the money. So altogether, that's a little over $1.2 million coming in and a little bit over $1.2 million going out. And that was a whole lot, so I'm happy to answer any questions.
I have a question. Out of the money spent last year and next year, how is the ratio between income and principal?
I don't understand the question.
So the endowment, like what is the spending percentage of the endowment that is meeting this?
I think it's set up on 4% of the 20-quarter average. If Bob, correct me if I'm wrong, but if that's the kind of all the transfers of the forever funds, the name forever funds.
Yes.
But some of this is like transfer from income from the budget surplus, right?
Right.
So
Yes.
some of it is really that endowment spending, and then some of it is other
Right.
grants and stuff on top of that.
Right.
Okay. And
the $400,000 is income off the unrestricted endowment. The $100,000 are new gifts, and the $750 is budget surplus. We have not rolled in the endowment for the Forever Fund yet because it just started to exist 2 weeks ago. So that will show up on next year's budget.
okay. And originally there was talk about two approaches: the Forever Fund as endowment spending, and the Today Fund as like grants that could come in and go out. Is that still part of the equation?
Yeah, notice Jay, and thanks for pointing that out. Notice there's 750 coming in from the budget surplus. There's 500 of that 700 is going into the Forever Fund endowment, which means that the other 250 is being spent in current year's grant making.
But you're not making a distinction between those two approaches. It's all considered the Forever Funds.
Yes, that's
okay.
That's yes.
And so going forward, donors can say, I want this spent immediately, or I want it to be endowed.
Yes.
Yes.
And in fact, that's what this budget is doing.
So so we and in our the marketing materials that we've been putting together for the Forever Funds, and actually in the video I showed earlier, there are those two approaches. You can make a gift to the endowment, or you can contribute to the current year's grant making. I will say, and this has sparked quite a bit of discussion internally, is that what I'd really like to try to do, what my goal is to build the endowment. And I don't want to discourage, if someone really wants to make a gift to current year's grant making, that's fine. But what we're really trying to do is build the endowment.
Okay, thank you.
We have any other questions? Okay, and well, at this point, then I ask for a motion to approve the Forever Fund budget.
So moved.
Do we have a second? Okay. Do we have any additional questions or comments? Okay, then all those approved, or all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
And any opposed? Okay, Forever Fund budget has passed. And Ariel, you're up next on the Give 365 grants.
Good evening, everybody. I'll just go really briefly. So we successfully wrapped up this year's grant cycle for Give 365. So hopefully everybody remembers that this year's theme was equity through access, projects and programs that increase access and or elevate the quality of life for communities of color. We had an awesome finals event on April 13th that was virtual that we got a lot of engagement around. So and a couple of new members to Give 365 as well. So we were really excited about that. The membership voted, and Alex helped us to analyze our results, and the A-team, the team captains, who are also A-team members this year, put forth these list of grantees for this year. So there are a couple of familiar organizations like Whole Crew, who we're really familiar with their work, and then other newer organizations like Landmark Training Development Company and their Farmers Market in Orange Mound, or Man Up Teachers Fellowship and their help to support and increase the number of licensed qualified teachers for students here in our community. So we're really excited to put forward this list of grantees. We're excited that half of them were led by EDs and CEOs of color, and we look forward to engaging with them throughout this year.
Well, and I guess we do need an action to go ahead and get these paid out. So
Move
do we have a
approval.
motion?
Chris, I just want to clarify, Give
Okay,
365, you all ratify these grants, not approve these grants because they're voted on by the membership.
Right, okay. So to ratify the grant, so we need a motion. So do we have that?
So moved.
And do we have a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay. And any further discussion or comments? Then all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And do we have any opposed? Okay, so that ratification is done. Now to Jay Healy, executing for our donors and giving us an update on the investment committee. So Jay, it's all yours.
Sure, thank you. So the investment committee has been busy over the last several months. We did have a virtual meeting for our donors and for our nonprofit partners to discuss the year's investments, and that went well. The good news is that the investments have performed well over the past year, and since everybody else is doing it, I'll share a screen as well. You've probably seen these results, but these are the investment pool performance over through the end of March. And the good news is whether you look at the quarter or the 1 year numbers, I think, well, certainly the 1 year numbers, every pool has outperformed its benchmark, which I think maybe it's been a while since we've been able to celebrate that. Part of that are changes the investment committee has made for the benefit of the pools over time. Part of that is just like sort of the reversion of some strategies that hadn't worked well in the past, but have worked well recently. And so, I just think it's worth recognizing that everything is going in a good direction. In addition to the meeting we had for donors and nonprofit partners, the subcommittee who is reviewing RFPs for our consulting relationship has been working hard on that. And literally that means reviewing 12 or more PDFs that are each 200 pages long with information about different consulting firms and their strategies and their processes and their, the services they can provide to the community foundation. So small committee has been involved in assessing those RFPs. We narrowed it down to 4 that we would consider going forward. We had a day worth of Zoom meetings with those consulting firms, and we had, thankfully, we had many participants from the investment committee itself involved with those Zoom meetings. So lots of information to gather. 4 very qualified participants in what we're considering. We haven't made a choice or a recommendation yet, but that will be coming soon. So that has been sort of the activity for the investment committee. Bob or Alex or Sutton, if there's anything else I need to share, please remind me.
No, I don't think so.
And I appreciate that, Jay. And just to let the rest of the board members know, as part of the hazing for the new chair, Jay and Duncan and Chip, they all tried to get me to sit through all of the investment committee meetings. As chairman, I chose not to, so I didn't accept the hazing. But I trust the group that we have, and we've had a great year, and so I do appreciate the work that they do, because it is an ongoing process. I know we have a discussion listed at the bottom of the agenda, and Bob had already talked about, the record performance we had the past year. Alex went through our budget, where we stand, that we, our funds are now over $1 billion. And so it's pretty amazing where we are today compared to previous years. And those of y'all that didn't get to attend, but then saw some of the videos that Bob put up, kind of explaining where we are, what we're doing, and then also the introduction of the Forever Funds. So Bob, a question that we want to throw out, and I'll throw the question out, Bob, you can fill in the rest, but based on what you all have seen, and what are your thoughts on the strengths and direction of the foundation, especially where we are today? And then how would you see the Forever Funds being promoted in the community? Because that's a big piece of this when we're hoping to grow this fund. And so the kind of getting that promotion and marketing hat on, how will we promote it? So Bob, you want to add anything to it?
Yeah, I'll just a couple quick things. We are at kind of an inflection point for the Community Foundation. I mean, we obviously are at a fiscal year end where we did clear $1 billion. We're about halfway through our current strategic plan, the most important piece of which was the launch of the Forever Funds. So we're now at that point where we're halfway through our strategic plan. We've accomplished a lot of what we were supposed to have accomplished, but we're at the point now where we're launching the Forever Funds, which is the most important piece. So I think we wanted to just pick everybody's brain, and knowing that people are pretty tired of Zoom calls at this point, but wanted to see what people's thoughts were about kind of where we are with our strengths and with our strategic direction, and just really just love to hear what people have to say.
Bob, this is Elisa, and hopefully you can hear me because I'm in the car. One of the things I think is the strength is we have stayed true to the strategic plan, and adjusting to focus on equity and inclusion and diversity and aligning grant making with that and capacity building. I don't think we can underestimate what a radical shift that was. So I really commend you and the staff for embracing the strategic plan and moving it forward, and also for the rest of the board members for those early conversations. But I do think that's one of the strengths. There was an openness to do things differently based on feedback. And then once that was laid out, you stuck to that.
Thanks. This is that Zoom fatigue I was afraid of.
I guess I have a question. You put in so much work to launch this, to research how to do it in the brochure that you have, or the pamphlet, I'd say, that you have in the board book. But what is the marketing strategy and the strategic strategy in terms of putting this out there in the public? Because just putting it in the commercial apparel of Daily Memphian, I don't think is going to get a critical mass of people. Do you have a strategy through churches or through other means to sort of seed this idea and let it spread?
Yeah, a couple things, Molly, because this is different from, we were going to launch the Forever Funds in May of 2020. And obviously with the onset of the pandemic, trying to launch any major initiative was going to be a bad idea. Unfortunately, we had done a lot of groundwork in 2019 and leading into 2020 with institutional philanthropy in the area. We had sought seed funding for the Forever Funds from local private foundations. And we had reasonable assurances that we were going to raise somewhere between $20 and $50 million in seed money from local philanthropy. Obviously, COVID changed everything. So we've had to rethink that. We postponed obviously the launch from 2020. We've been in touch with the private foundation community, and we launched without their seed money in hand. We're certainly going to be approaching them, and that's going to be a key part of this because we've done a lot of groundwork with them already. Beyond that, and this is part of the reason we wanted to pick this group's brain too. Beyond that, we're going to start with a lot of the press and the things that you've seen, but our intent is to go targeting individuals and specific donors and other lead givers in the community. And we have to be careful too, because our desire is to not get in front of any other major initiative, any other major fundraising initiatives that are going on out there. So we're actually planning really for the long haul. So we're going to be talking to as many people as will listen to us, and talk about what the purpose of the long-term purpose of the Forever Funds is to build a community-based, inspired endowment that will be contributing to the community forever. Hopefully that produces gifts shortly, but if it produces state gifts or other gifts that'll be coming in years ahead, that's fine too. So our plan right now is to go into a pretty targeted calling campaign against individuals, community leaders, particularly local philanthropy.
Bob, I'll just.
Oh, go ahead.
I'll just chime in. Like, there's two things you can get from some of the larger philanthropic families in town. One is actual money, and the other is endorsement. And so having that, verbal acknowledgement that they're behind us, obviously the money's important, but that's important too. And so I know that the whole community foundation is great at marketing, great at setting up in-person meetings and presentations. I look forward to getting back to that, but having some people on the stage talking about why it's so important could be transformational. And even I always like to aim high. Mackenzie Scott, who found us and donated the $8 million plus, if she could come and talk, that would be great. So something like that would be worth considering.
Yep. Great.
Well, and I'll say that again, we're in an unbelievable position right now. And especially just think of the work that so many on the staff and so many on the board have done the last few years, whether it was with Terry Freeman and Bob Quinn, and looking at what we did with MLK 50, and then now with Seeding Success and Beyond the Classroom, with us making sure that we have this great Live Give Mid-South, where we've done the work and the research and made sure that we've got this database of all of the nonprofits, charities, and groups in town. So we've done the legwork so we can help explain to donors where this money's going, and especially when we talk about the inclusivity and all those things that we and diversity that we've been working on and making decisions on, whether it was on the grants and initiatives and strengthening nonprofits committee and some of the things that Kathy Cowan will be leading, and what we've been able to do with the COVID relief fund. And so, I think we've got a perfect voice and expertise to show what we've done the last couple of years for the community. And so it's something easy to offer to our donors who maybe we have not necessarily directed them specifically where to go, but we've got we've got a track record the last few years of all the legwork we've done. And so, I think it's an easy sell, once we get out there. And so I'm unbelievably proud to be where we are today, especially what we've been able to do over the last few years in helping the community. Anyone else got any feedback?
I think this is Lisa again. I think the only thing I would add, and it's based on the video that was played earlier about the Forever Fund, and part of the tagline in there was about listening to the community and listening to diverse voices. I think you need to, and this is based on what was just said, is that you're also, as an organization, we've been very responsive. So yes, we've listened, but we've responded and responded quickly. So somehow weaving that into the message is important.
Yeah, thanks. And that actually gets at another thing that we're going to be doing too, and that is we're going to be lifting up our grant committees. Kathy and Bob, this will be the first you hear that, but we're probably going to be publishing pictures of the broader committees just so that everybody can see who's on the committee and make sure that they'll be able to confirm that those committees are and always have been very diverse anyway.
And I had something I've been thinking about these funds for a while that I didn't know the right form, and maybe this is still not it. But Bob, you've done, you and Sutton and everyone have done an excellent job of conveying that the kind of giving that we have done, are doing, and are poised to do as we build up the Forever Funds is different than the private foundations in town, different than corporate foundations in town, because it does have such a degree of engagement in the community. I would just ask you to not undersell the professionalism of the community foundation staff as it relates to giving. I am positive that Chris would agree, and Kathy would agree that our committees are terrific, but we would be nowhere without the professional skills that your team brings to the party, to the screening the applications and helping us think through the right way to poise it. I don't think you should be shy about the fact that this is an A+ organization compared to other foundations, and is deeply responsive and engaged with community members in its giving. And so I keep hearing the second half of that, and pardon me for saying this, but sometimes that sounds like we're a volunteer army and a little not fully professional. And that just doesn't reflect the reality that I see in the giving that we do.
Yeah, Bob, there's no way over the years, especially the Strengthening Nonprofits Committee, and I know Kathy ran it for a while, then I ran it for the last 4 or 5 years. Now Kathy's taking it back over, that being able to go through and sift through hundreds and hundreds of proposals and set up the times to meet with these organizations. And I mean, there's no way that it could be done without the staff. So you're 100% correct there that I mean, we've got a high touch professional group that's out there on the ground daily working with these groups, and we couldn't do it. We couldn't do it without them.
And
hey, Chris.
I think prospective donors would appreciate that and respond to that, particularly if you're asking for, significant capital contributions. I think posing that, again, my soapbox, but I think that all fits in with continued investment on the behalf of the foundation in the professionals and that staff. So, more resources, we chime this up to the numbers that you're thinking about in terms of aspirations. That's going to be a lot of grant making. So, end of my thoughts. So I'm very, very happy. You all have done exactly what we said we wanted to do in the strategic plan. And of course, I was very supportive of the development of that. So I'm really pleased with what's happening.
And Chris, the last thing that I was going to add to it, because I think what everyone has said here has been said beautifully, and I'm in full agreement. And in my way of thinking, it's just a slightly different vision, and that is that I know at least when I came on the board, whatever that was, 7-8 years ago now, in large part, it seemed that we marketed the Community Foundation as one of those professional organizations that could facilitate your giving, the efficiency of how philanthropists give. And I think Elisa is exactly right. We have shifted over these last couple of years to being a much louder voice to advocate for the issues within the community. And I just think that's a wonderful pivot, and I think it's a wonderful future direction for us to go in.
Right. And Marshall, I remember a conversation we had, and it was one of my first board meetings, and it was us finally admitting out loud that we were going to advocate for nonprofits, not just provide services for our donors, but advocate for those groups, nonprofits, charities out there. And it was, the thing in my head was, well, if we haven't been doing that, why haven't we? It was about damn time.
Yeah.
And so I think, like you said, that pivot where we are today, the things that we've got going on, and the visions and dreams that are there are really exciting. And you know, when you said that, I got chills a little bit because it made me think back to that meeting a few years ago. So I'm excited. I'm ready to roll. And so I know if you do have additional feedback or thoughts, once you once you sleep on this a little bit, please do send feedback to Sutton and Bob and ideas with that marketing promotion in mind. And so I don't, unless somebody else has some additional comments, or Bob, anything else you want to add before I kind of wrap up?
I would just say to Molly's point earlier, as we are kind of rolling out different parts of the marketing plan, if there are groups or places or people that you think that we should have a conversation with, please don't feel like you can't. Please bring that to us so that we can figure out the best way to do that.
Yeah, I mean, that's, we have all of you on this board for many reasons, but one of those is the capital that you've built up with people in the community. And so, you know, it's time for us to tap those resources again and share the great things that we have going. And so again, Molly, and what you said earlier, but thank you, Sutton, for reiterating that again, Bob's teed up and ready to go. We've got a budget now, we've got a vision, and we've got a great group of staff and volunteers who are ready to jump out there and make it happen. So again, I think I've said it a million times already, but I'm excited and honored to be here for all of this. What I would do, and if I did not say this, Sutton will hurt me. At the very bottom of your agenda, we already have the remaining board meetings calendar set for the coming year, and so or the rest of the year. So if you do not mind throwing that in your calendar, and so you will see some reminders about this as we get farther down the road. But if you would put those in your advanced calendar, that would be lovely, because we all have a lot of expectations, and we have an outline of where we're going, and I think we have a good roadmap, and we need all of y'all there with us as we travel that road. So that's really all I have. Bob, Sutton, anything else before we sign off?
Nope.
Well,
Thanks,
I
everybody.
hope I still have this job after my first meeting. And I truly appreciate all of y'all being involved. I can't wait to see you all in person. I'm an extreme extrovert. I need to see people. It's killing me. And so you can wear a sign saying I accept hugs or not hugs or whatever when we see each other in person. But watch out, I'm coming for you. So anyway, y'all have a great week and weekend, and we will all be in touch soon. Thank you.
Great job.